Part 22. Sunday Drive. Heading south on Highway 215. June 9th, 1992. Sunday, 9:46 a.m. The station wagon roared through the light traffic down a long stretch of open highway. The Terminator drove, and Sarah sat in the passenger seat. John was in the back seat watching the backs of their heads and marvelling at how they were like some weird family on a Sunday road trip. Sarah leaned over to get a look at the speedometer. "Keep it under 65. We can't afford to get pulled over." The Terminator slightly backed off the throttle, saying, "Affirmative." "No, no, no," John scolded. "You gotta listen to the way people talk. See, you don't say things like affirmative or some robot shit like that. You gotta say, no problemo, see?" The Terminator nodded, filing away the information again in that slightly different way, seeming to pick up phantom ghosts of undermeanings and cross-references that were not readily apparent. Sarah was ignoring the lesson, lost in thought. John elucidated further, a professor of current colloquialisms. If someone comes after you with an attitude, you say, "Eat me." If you want to shine them on, it's "Hasta la vista, baby." "Hasta la vista, baby?" the Terminator asked, uncertain of the boy's pronunciation, but sensing contextual appropriateness. "Yeah, or later, dickwad." Or if someone gets upset, you say, "Chill out." Like that. Or you can do combinations. Within seconds, the concept registered in the Terminator's synthetic mind, and he said, "Chill out, dickwad." "That's great! See? You're getting it." "No problemo," the Terminator added. John grinned widely with the pride of a successful teacher. Fueling. Jack's Cafe, 10:01 a.m. It had a gas pump and a sleazy fast food stand. Picnic tables were set up at the side of the stand. A family sat alone at one, children playing and running about nearby. The mother, 45 pounds overweight and going for 50 with a double-decked cheeseburger, idly glanced over her husband's shoulder as the dusty station wagon pulled up next to a gas pump. Sarah turned to John and asked, "You got any cash?" John pulled out what was left of his Fed teller money, quickly counting. "Only a couple of hundred. I'll give you half." Sarah snatched all of it out of his hand, peeled off a 20 and handed it back to John. "Get some food," she commanded, then opened the door and got out. John turned to the Terminator. "No sense of humour." The cyborg gave no reply. John sighed, then said, "Come on." They got out of the station wagon and started walking towards the food stand. "And that's another thing," John said. "You've got to lighten up a bit yourself. This severe routine is getting old. Smile once in a while." "Smile?" The Terminator pondered the concept. It didn't seem in the least bit necessary to the success of the mission. "Yeah, smile. You know, people smile, right? Watch." John reached the order window and smiled broadly at the weathered, middle-aged woman standing impatiently inside. "Hi, nice place you got here. How's business?" The woman's feet were one big ache. She had no time to waste on snotty little brats. "Gimme a break." John turned back to the Terminator, shrugging. Okay, bad example." Then he noticed something over the cyborg's shoulder. "Over there, look." John pointed at a teenage girl watching her boyfriend talk on a nearby payphone. Something the other party was saying made him laugh. The girl smiled along with him. "Like that," John said. The Terminator zoomed in on the real-time image of the smiling couple, while a replay of the boy's grin ran in an electronic window. It expanded, the mouth filling the window. The Terminator replayed it again, in slow motion, while a vector graphic of lips smiling appeared alongside, accompanied by an array of symbolic data chattering by. And again, that difference in collating data struck the Terminator. There were unspoken or unseen data leaking in from the unconscious and cross-referencing going on in his wafer circuit brain. He was learning. Knowing all he needed to know about a smile, the Terminator tried one. John winced. The result was dismal, a rictus-like curling up of the upper lip. John tried to be encouraging. Better not do that in public. Look, try again. The Terminator's next effort was a marginal improvement. I don't know. Maybe you could practice in front of a mirror or something like that. The Terminator made another effort. The overweight woman glanced over her husband's shoulder at the tall, well-built man standing by the food stand. He was making strange faces. "Ralph," she said, uncertain. "I think something's wrong with that man." Her husband turned and saw the man screwing up his lips experimentally. Ralph grunted and turned back to his food, saying, "He probably just got a good look at you." She punched him in the arm, hard. When Sarah came out of the restroom, John and the Terminator had already brought in the cheeseburgers and Cokes and taken them over to the car. She joined them and grabbed a bag of fries, ravenous. They were parked away from the other families at the end of the gravel parking area. The Terminator, completely disinterested in food, was pouring coolant into the radiator. Sarah was mechanically chewing the cheeseburger, deep in thought, turning and turning the whole thing over in her brain. What was after them? What Skynet's new strategy was? What they could do to stop the T-1000? She was feeling a little better, more in control. She knew now what they must do, what she had tried to do a long time ago, what had gotten her committed. It was an idea that she had abandoned, but thanks to the existence of the T-1000 in her time, she knew now it must be acted upon. Skynet had provided the proof she needed. It believed time travel could change history. Supposedly the most complex mind in history, it would develop time travel as a tactical weapon to alter history. In fact, Skynet was so certain that time displacement could save it from defeat that it had sent 2 Terminators through, one in 1984 and one now, to terminate the mother, and if that failed, the child. Remove 2 human beings, like pieces out of a puzzle, hoping the new historical pattern that emerged after would be more in its favour. Editing the past to change its present. Okay, Sarah thought, an adrenaline rush pouring through her. Why can't I do the same thing? Why not find a way to alter my present to change the future? It was what she had tried to do years before when she had first attacked Cyberdyne. She realised now that she needed to focus in more on one crucial person. At the exact moment that history could be pivoted away from nuclear war. John wanted to talk to her, not about strategies or weapons or the future, just talk. A million things, nothing. The tone was more important. Trivial nothings had no end use other than a pleasant feeling between mother and son. But he could see the dark clouds in her eyes. They had always been there. He had never known the other Sarah, of course, the one before he was born, before the Terminator. He had no idea how this woman was once a young, impressionable, pretty girl, whose only serious decision in life was what to major in at college. All he saw was the brooding, haunted Sarah, her life turned into a mission, with him as its objective. The food was turning to lead in his stomach, and he couldn't deal with her silence, so he stood up and went around to where the Terminator was working. John saw 2 kids playing with machine gun water pistols nearby, viciously squirting each other between giggles. "You're dead! I'm not! Ah, so!" The ancient game of pretend combat and fake death. The rehearsed final falling into the bottomless abyss, sensed but unimaginable to a 10-year-old kid. Unless you're John Connor. Sarah rounded the front of the car and saw John sighing, solemn. He looked up at the cyborg, not seeing her, and asked, "We're not going to make it, are we? People, I mean." The Terminator glanced at the battling children. "It is in your nature to destroy yourselves." John nodded. He had seen real people with real guns playing the game of death. Violence seemed to come in many forms. On television, the movies, in newspapers, in jokes, between lovers and friends. There were enemies everywhere, and blood ran freely. Other children could see all of this and find a way to laugh around it, because it was so unreal, so far away. Unless you were at the center of it. Unless your mother made you aware of it, rammed your face in it until everywhere you saw skulls instead of faces. The future. It was all true. There would be a war. And millions would die. And he would lead the survivors against the machines, and there would be nothing left to win back from them but mutilated bodies and vast ruins. That's what he felt. What he finally said was, "Yeah, drag, huh?" But Sarah guessed what he was thinking. She'd worn the same expression of despair for years. She knew full well what was in store for her son. Victories, yes. But after years of struggle, under the most abject of conditions, John Connor was evidently the pivot of fate. For some reason, he was at the center of the circle. The time loop revolved around him in some unexplainable way. No one man should have been saddled with such a burden. It was a killing weight. And looking at her son, all these years in hiding, had been like looking at humanity, crying out with every cell against the vile cruelty of destiny. His lot in life was to be the saviour of the world, but at what cost to him? And to her. It had already scarred their lives. She had been willing to accept that, to save the millions of other children. Yes, she would sacrifice herself and her son. But while finishing her bag of French fries, Sarah was ready to act. She approached the Terminator and said, "I need to know how Skynet gets built. Who's responsible?" The Terminator searched his memory. There was a basic history of his time embedded in the circuits. Data useful as a basis for cross-reffing and scaling events in this time. The Terminator gained access to it with prioritizing it as tactical information. Another first. He answered her. "The man most directly responsible is Miles Bennett Dyson, Director of Special Projects at Cyberdyne Systems Corporation." Why him? In a few months, he creates a revolutionary type of microprocessor. Then what? The Terminator closed the hood and got back into the wagon as he spoke. In 3 years, Cyberdyne will become the largest supplier of military computer systems. All stealth bombers are upgraded with Cyberdyne computers, becoming fully unmanned. Afterward, they fly with a perfect operational record. Sarah hopped in behind John, and the Terminator began to drive out of the parking lot. Great. Then those fat fucks in Washington figure, what the hell, let a computer run the whole show, right? Basically, the cyborg answered, after interpreting her colloquialisms. As he accelerated back onto the highway, the Terminator continued. The Skynet funding bill is passed. The system goes online, August 4th, 1997. Human decisions are removed from strategic defense. Skynet begins to learn at a geometric rate. It becomes self-aware at 2:14 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, August 29th. In a panic, they try to pull the plug. And Skynet fights back? John asked. Yes, the Terminator answered. It launches its ICBMs against their targets in Russia. Why attack Russia? They're our friends now, aren't they? Because Skynet knows the Russian counterstrike will remove its enemies here. Sarah began to see a micro-thin beam of hope in the dark sky. "How much do you know about Dyson?" she asked. "I have detailed files. I want to know everything. What he looks like, where he lives, everything." John saw that old, grim expression of defiance return to her face. Mom was up to something.